evening to one and all. I'm Sumana Mohammed and I'm Samita Jagadish. We're honored to step into our roles as the Global Directors of Medicare Bahrain. Medicare is an organization committed to making healthcare education accessible and impactful, ensuring that individuals have the knowledge to make informed decisions about their well-being. Through action, advocacy, and awareness, we aim to create a healthier and more empowered world.
Today, we have the privilege of speaking with a distinguished expert in dermatology, Dr. Anita Saratampi. With 15 years of experience in treating skin, hair, nail disorders, and STIs, along with cosmetic dermatology, she has helped countless individuals regain their confidence through her medical and aesthetic solutions. Her insights today will not only deepen our understanding of skin health, but will also shed light on its broader impact on global healthcare. This is not just a conversation. It's a deep dive into how dermatology intersects with public health, innovation, and the future of wellness. Dr. Tampi, it is truly an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and it is my pleasure too.
Now, let's dive in and unlock the insights that can change lives. Skincare is one of those things where we think we are doing everything right until our skin disagrees. So what are the most common mistakes people are doing with skincare?
I think the most common mistakes that people are doing is doing too much. Our skin is an organ, in fact, the largest organ on our body. And you need to understand is little is enough. Okay, so basic sunscreen, moisturizing, staying hydrated, lots of water, avoiding hot water. This is as good as it gets. Okay, when you have problematic skin, let's treat it. If you have no issues, stick to these simple things and keep it simple. That's what I always say. Simple is the best way.
That's interesting.
Thank you.
Now, speaking of adjustments, weather plays an important role in skin health.
Correct.
Whether it's summer heat or winter dryness, how should people change their skincare routine based on climate?
So during the summers, it's always advisable to use lighter products. So you don't use heavy creams, you don't use thick products because your skin's going to get oily, greasy. Given the climate, it is going to clog the pores. So you want to use lighter products during the summers, and during the winters when your skin gets dry and it gets irritated, use your thicker creams and whatever completely moisturizes the skin. You're not allowed to use hot water during the winters because it dries up the skin, it sucks the moisture out. During the summers, you want to stay hydrated, use cooler water. This is one of the most important things, and people usually mistake it with the products. They go to the stores, pick out just, it's a cream, lotion, gel. They don't know when to use what. So this is my most important advice to people with climatic conditions.
So basically, skincare should also evolve with seasons just like fashion.
Yes.
Now, we know that skincare is not just about external factors. It's about what we put inside our bodies as well. So what foods do you believe would actually enhance our skin and give us a very healthy, glowy skin?
So ideally, all fruits and vegetables, you are supposed to have antioxidants, omega-rich food. All of these help enhance your natural, vitamins, minerals. You're not supposed to be eating a lot of junk food. Not that I'm against it. It's just that the junk food, oily food, fried food, it tends to trigger a lot more of the oil production, which can again clog up the pores, lead to acne, all other skin conditions that I think a lot of people have. So we want to keep them off. There are certain conditions where, people who are allergic to certain foods can get allergic skin reactions with those foods. Obviously, they have to not take them. But other than that, it's always better to eat healthy. Enjoy your cheat day once a week. But other than that, it should be healthy foods.
Yeah. So skincare starts from inside. What we eat directly impacts what shows up on our...
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's switch gears to hair health.
Okay.
Everyone wants fuller, thicker hair, including me.
Right.
So what are some science-backed ways to get full, thick hair?
So first of all, hair, if I don't know whether many people know about this, but hair is directly proportional to our entire health and mental well-being. So if there's a physical or a mental health issue, I don't mean that you have to have something major happening. Even if it's a small cold or you're stressed about your exam, believe it or not, in a week to 2 weeks or a month after the stress, you will notice that your hair fall is a little more. So anything crazy with your body, it can show up with your hair. Number two, people who go on those crazy fat diets, we're women. So sometimes we tend to go crazy with our diet, just a banana a day, a green leaf a day. That's not healthy. So we lose 10 kgs in 2 months. But you notice that after the 10 kgs, you're suddenly losing a lot of hair because you depleted all the nutrition from your body. So you're not supposed to do these crazy fat diets. You're supposed to eat healthy. That is the most important thing with hair. Number 3, you don't have to wash your hair every day. We're stripping our hair of natural oils twice a week, thrice a week is good enough. Understandable that we go to the gym or we go to school and we have sweaty hair. You can just rinse it off really quickly. You don't need to wash it every day. That actually damages your scalp more.
And what about the use of conditioners? Is it really advisable or?
See, it's a 50-50 situation. If it's a thing that you enjoy, I'm not against it. You can use very little, use it at the ends of your hair. And if it works for you, great. If you're not comfortable, you don't have to use it. I personally use it because I need it. My hair is thick, so I need it. But otherwise, if you're not comfortable, you don't have to use it. See, everything has a plus and minus. Now it's on us what we decide to do.
Of course. And dandruff is such a persistent issue. So how can we cure it?
So see, dandruff is a very broad term. So dandruff is something people call dryness on the scalp, also dandruff. People call a fungal infection dandruff. Dandruff is also an eczema. So first you have to identify, what do you have? Do you have really dandruff, or do you have dry skin, or do you have eczema? Or do you have a fungal infection? So it starts with that. If you're taking really hot showers, we're just having dry skin. If you're in the summers having itchy scalp and flakes all over your shoulder, like our cricketers doing the head and shoulder ads and whatnot, yes, you have, what is typically called as dandruff. Now, unfortunately, dandruff has no permanent cure. It's only controllable. This is because this is directly related to our oil secretion. So when we're 60 years old, maybe we will be rid of it because there won't be any glands left on us. So yeah.
Oh, so you mean the glands will all
shrink up like our skin. So when we're aging. So they will all start shrinking. So when there's no oil production, no dandruff. So I'm sorry to break the bad news, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about different regional dermatological conditions. So we know that different regions face different dermatological challenges, and Asia, for instance, has its own set of skin concerns. So what are the most common skin concerns and issues faced in Asia, and why do they occur?
Asia being a very tropical climate, the most common thing is infections. All skin infections, first thing, you can think of is Asia. Like, in fact, I studied dermatology, leprosy, and venereology. Leprosy is something you don't hear of much in the West, but I studied in India and we still have cases of leprosy. I had to see cases of leprosy and pass the examination. So leprosy is an infection caused by a bacteria. So we still have, because of the climatic conditions, infections. Second, of course, because of the fact that majority countries in Asia are developing countries, resources awareness is not as popular as in the West or available as in the West. So it is a little hard to treat, these conditions because of lack of funding. Number 2, stigmatic conditions. Asian culture, we have a lot of stigma around certain conditions. For example, vitiligo, psoriasis. We see them as, oh my God, will it spread to another person? Will it come to me if I go eat in their, plate or drink their water, or if I touch them, will I get it? It's not infectious. It's just a condition that person has, unfortunately, but they cannot spread it. So these are the most common things, but how do we solve them? I think it has to be more based on awareness. Yeah.
It's incredible how geography affects skin lines. But this reminds me of one skin issue that teenagers all over the world, including myself, are facing. That's acne.
Right.
So is there any practical solution or a practical skincare routine with which we can sort out acne?
So the first thing is knowing the type of skin that you have. If you have oily skin, you need to be using a good cleanser. You need to be using very little moisturizer, actually, not creamy moisturizer, gel-based moisturizers. You have to be eating healthy. The most important thing for teenagers, I think they underplay this, is eating healthy. Eating healthy, drinking lots of water. If you're not doing this, no amount of treatment is going to work. So after doing this, if you still have acne, that's when we go with medical treatments. We have to think about doing maybe antibiotics or stronger things, and then we take it on from there, depending on how the teenager is responding. But if you have, let's say, oily skin, I talked about, majority teenagers will have oily skin because of the fact that that's the time when puberty hits. So all your glands are going to be a little hyperactive. So it is going to be obvious that they're going to have oily skin. But in case you have dry skin and then you're having acne breakouts, so then we treat it differently. We give them a more hydrating moisturizer, a hydrating face wash, and we tell them to always, put a little more cream or anything to just keep the skin a little more supple.
So what kind of creams are advisable?
So that is a very touchy situation. I think with the, advent of so much social media, I think all the teenagers are very aware of what to buy and not to buy. And I'm not a very big fan of that. Now, unfortunately, good skincare is a little pricey, but I'm not one to advocate good skincare that you have to buy only the pricey products. If a skincare that is affordable range works for you, please pick it. You don't have to pick up the pricey skincare. So it's a personal choice, number one, but everything does not work for everyone. One fit does not work for all. So if I pick something and it works for me, does not mean that it should work for you. So it's not always about the money. It's about how it works on your skin. That's the most important thing. So don't go by what you see. You always try it out on your skin. You see how it works. Always best to go to a doctor first, dermatologist first, get their opinion and only pick up a product. Do not let a store, somebody who works in a store guide you into buying a cosmetic product to put on your face, because that's not their job. That's not their responsibility. They know nothing about how good, you should be taking care of the skin. They don't know about a product. They're taught to sell it. That's all. The science behind it is my job. So I think children should be more aware about that. Yeah.
And now, as we've touched the topic of social media, social media is one of the biggest forces that's driving the skincare routines of many teenagers and even adults today.
Right.
So do you think this social media skincare routines and the product endorsements are helping us or they're harming us more?
I think it's harming us more because it's putting a false narrative into all populations, all populations of all ages, that, hey, you know what? You buy all of this. I want to ask you, how many makeup foundations do you need? How many lipsticks do you need? How many concealers do you need? How many sunscreens do you need? Isn't one good enough? If one is finished, you buy the next one. How many do you need to swatch? So why are you putting this idea? It's just consumerism, according to me. I'm so sorry we are digressing from the topic, but it's just consumerism. I would always suggest kids, especially kids, should not be allowed to be influenced by the social media. I think we had an epidemic of sorts with the Sephora epidemic, where it was only 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds putting retinol products from famous brands on their skin. How are we encouraging this? How are we allowing this? So there should be some, limitations to what is being done online, what is being put online. It should be restricted, or, it should be like, okay, only people above 18 who are adult enough to make a, informed decision. They should be the ones to make these purchases, not children below 18. So I think social media has confused people a lot. Whether, this is good, this is good, this is good. But I say don't go by that. You go by your personal experience. Go by a doctor always with a dermatologist, not by social media influencers. If they have told you, I've been to this dermatologist and this dermatologist told me this, you want to take an appointment with that dermatologist, go meet them and then get your skincare done.
So social media is just leading to lots of misinformation.
Misinformation, for sure. And then see, when nothing goes their way, I'm sure that they also have their issues with certain brands, or they have their complaints. But who knows about all those things? That's all in the background. We just see the front, whatever they're showing us.
And this is reminding me of something even more concerning, something which has more consequences, skin cancer.
Yeah.
So with the change in climate as well as the depletion of ozone layer, how can we protect ourselves and screen ourselves from skin cancer?
So the number one thing is, there is a myth that skin cancer is mostly for people who are in, America or in Australia. It is true, they are more prone to it. That is because of their skin type. But that does not mean that people who are in Bahrain, people who are in Africa will not get it, or people who are in India will not get it. All of us are prone to it. Some ethnicities a little more than the others. But what we all need to do is, we all need to wear sunscreen, irrespective of our ethnicity. So sunscreen is important for me, and it's important for all other skin types. Number two, if you are a person with a lot of moles, if you've noticed moles are changing their shape and size, it is your responsibility to visit your dermatologist once in a year, once in 6 months, especially if you have a skin cancer history in the family. If you have a personal skin cancer history, or if you've noticed lesions or skin, moles or something on your skin that is not healing, just bleeding, crusting. It's not healing. Why it's not healing without you touching? That's suspicious. Make sure you go to a doctor. Do not delay this. Yeah.
And skin health is not just a personal responsibility, it is a global initiative, and we, organizations like Medicate, work to bridge the healthcare education gaps. So, how do you think we, the organizations, can truly impact the dermatological care?
I want to thank Medicate, first of all, for organizing this. But what Medicate can do is provide more awareness, about skincare, about the different conditions that are there in, dermatology, venereology, leprosy. Like I said, some conditions that are there in the East are not there in the West. Maybe you can bridge that gap. You can provide more funding to underdeserving, populations in developing countries where, there are no funding. So we can provide all of that. And this maybe will help, provide more. I don't know. I cannot phrase it better, but
We understand
yes,
it. Yes,
maybe
doctor.
provide more support and help to all these countries as well. But very good initiative, irrespective from Medicaid. So I think a little more, a little more help to bridge all these countries together by making them more aware about the situation. So when you make them aware, there will be more funding for research and then, for treatment, management, planning, and then the process goes on.
Yeah, that's the goal,
Yeah.
to turn education into action
Correct.
and advocacy into change.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And skin health is not just a side conversation. It is something which requires a louder voice on global stage. Yeah.
I think people need to be more aware about, one is infections. Like I said, that's something that people need to be aware about. Skin cancers, obviously now everyone is very aware about it. But then there are autoimmune conditions. There are conditions like vitiligo. There are conditions like psoriasis. There are conditions like lupus. And I'm more concerned about stigmatic conditions. Like I said, vitiligo, psoriasis, all of this where people are so embarrassed or ashamed or, put as a taboo in society. I want there to be more awareness. We, talk more about so that, hey, this is nothing to worry about. This is common. Alopecia. Another thing that people are so embarrassed about, worried about. There's nothing to be worried about. This is your body. It had a reaction. It's okay. You are normal. This is your normal. There's no need to be ashamed about it. I want there to be more conversations about these things, not like keep it taboo and keep it stigmatic and, let those people feel conscious of it.
That's really motivational, doctor.
Thank you.
Now, as we've come to the end of the session, I want you to leave with one final defining question. The kind of question which does not just end a conversation here, it'll ignite one. And the question is, if you had just 1 minute before the world leaders and you had to champion about the dermatological care and skin health, what would you say?
I would ask them to consider, when they are providing more funding to research, consider all sects of the society. Don't just think about, okay, a little here, a little there, what is predominant in the West or maybe in, down south in Australia, New Zealand. Think about the global conditions that are more prevalent and then plan to, treat it. Don't just make it a very vague, condition.
That's an answer the world cannot afford to ignore.
Thank you.
And Dr. Thampi, it was again an honor for us to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank both of you, Sumana and Samika, and I want to thank Medicate for taking this, wonderful initiative. It's a very nice concept. I'm very happy that I was chosen. I feel honored. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for having me here as well. Okay. Thank you to both of you. Wonderful job to both of you.
This conversation was beyond insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
But
Thank
this
you.
will undoubtedly shape the projects which we continue to drive forward. Until then, it is your Global Director, Sumana Mohammed, signing off. Correct. Aim to create a healthier and more empowered world. Her expertise will undoubtedly continue to shape the fabulous evening to one and all.